Everything in your existence, from the very fabric of your thoughts to the cadence of your movements, and ultimately, the outcomes you manifest, can be traced back to the bedrock of habit. It isn't necessarily the grand, infrequent decisions that define you, those once-in-a-blue-moon choices, but rather the subtle, unwavering actions you embrace each and every day. These seemingly insignificant choices etch the path of your life, they construct your identity. However, many still subscribe to the illusion that triumph springs forth from a singular moment, a sudden breakthrough, or a fortunate stroke of luck. But this notion is a fallacy. The profound truth is that success resides in the realm of repetition. It isn't found in grand gestures, but rather it is meticulously crafted in the everyday. It is forged in the crucible of your actions when the eyes of the world are not upon you. And there exists one such habit, deceptively simple, undeniably clear, and frequently overlooked, that possesses the transformative power to reshape your life with astonishing speed. It's a shift that transcends the slow march of years to deliver tangible results. Indeed, it can initiate a comprehensive restructuring of your existence almost overnight. If you resonate with the principles we are cultivating here, this sanctuary of clarity, discipline, and continual self-improvement, I would like to make a simple request: please, subscribe. It is through this simple action that this message endures and extends its reach to those who stand to benefit from it the most. That is the very essence of Stoicism: to seize dominion over your own existence, to claim ownership of your time, your energy, and your responses to the world. Because if you neglect this fundamental duty, someone or something inevitably will. The Stoics did not chase the unattainable illusion of controlling the external world. Instead, they committed themselves to the rigorous discipline of mastering their inner nature. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, eloquently wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." In a world perpetually vying for your attention, the capacity to govern your inner life transcends mere desirability, it becomes an absolute necessity. A vast number of individuals, often unknowingly, have relinquished this control. They rise from their slumber and immediately surrender their lives to the whims of external forces. A relentless torrent of messages, obligations, and distractions inundates their senses before they even have the opportunity to formulate a coherent thought. From the instant their feet touch the ground, the day ceases to be their own. They find themselves reacting rather than acting, following instead of leading. And so, each day commences with the same frantic energy and concludes with the same haunting questions: where did the time vanish? Why do I constantly feel behind? Why does nothing ever seem to change? But let us pose a far more crucial question: what if you were to resolutely refuse to allow the world to dictate your rhythm any longer? What if, instead of being swept away by the current, you boldly chose to chart its course? The esteemed Carl Jung once wisely stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And his words ring with unassailable truth. Most people fail to grasp the degree to which they have been molded by patterns that they never consciously created. Their habits, their thoughts, their emotional responses, all were haphazardly formed by chance, not intentionally crafted by choice. But once you awaken to this reality, once you gain crystal clear insight into how your attention has been scattered and fragmented, you can no longer feign powerlessness. So, what truly distinguishes those who drift aimlessly through life from those who make significant, purposeful strides forward? It isn't some obscure technique or a morning ritual gleaned from a self-help book. It isn't about the mere performance of rising before dawn for the sake of appearances. The pivotal distinction lies in a singular, transformative commitment, to assert ownership over your time and your energy, consistently and without compromise. The profound Plato, in his wisdom, taught that the first and greatest victory resides in conquering oneself. This habit embodies that triumph in action. It is the conscious choice to no longer await ideal conditions, to no longer postpone action until you are overcome with fleeting inspiration. It is the unwavering refusal to be governed by transient emotions or external noise, to instead live with intention, to act with clarity, and to fiercely protect that which truly matters. That is the defining characteristic of those who lead themselves. This shift may appear subtle on the surface, but its ramifications are profound. When you seize ownership of your time, your focus intensifies. You begin to discern the crucial difference between the urgent and the important. You gain clarity in recognizing where your precious energy is being depleted, and you initiate the process of reclaiming it. You cease moving aimlessly, and you stop filling your day with meaningless tasks. Instead, you begin to align every action with a deeper, more meaningful purpose. The brilliant Aristotle once observed, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And this habit, the deliberate ownership of your time and energy, serves as the very foundation of that excellence. It isn't fueled by fleeting emotion, but by unwavering discipline. It isn't reliant on external validation, but rather is deeply rooted in self-respect. You begin to move with purpose, your actions become deliberate, and your emotions cease to dictate the course of your day. You no longer passively await inspiration, you actively create momentum. You transform into the builder, not the waiter. And what are the effects? They are immediate, tangible, and life-altering. Abruptly, the question of, "Why am I not moving forward?" vanishes from your thoughts, replaced by the exhilarating sensation of rapid acceleration. You cease observing others succeed, instead becoming deeply immersed in your own execution. You no longer crave external motivation, because you have transformed action into your default state. Why is this shift so incredibly potent? Because it permeates every aspect of your existence. It shapes the way you awaken, the way you respond to setbacks, the way you sustain focus when it is inconvenient, and the way you persevere even when no one is watching. It transforms discipline from a constant struggle into an ingrained system, from a tedious chore into the very core of your identity. Still, does it sound too simple? That is precisely the point. Profound transformations often emerge from what appears to be obvious, even ordinary. But ordinary does not equate to ineffective. Most people dismiss it precisely because it lacks the sensational allure of a revolution. There is no grand unveiling, no thunderous applause, only a quiet, internal shift. And yet, it is this very subtlety that renders it so remarkably effective. As the esteemed Socrates wisely stated, the unexamined life is not worth living. And the examined life, the deliberate life, is the very birthplace of growth. It isn't that the path is concealed, it is simply that most individuals are too consumed by distractions to traverse it. How does this transformative shift become sustainable? It commences by choosing, each and every day, to prioritize direction over fleeting emotion, to move forward regardless of whether you feel inclined to do so or not. Carl Jung astutely noted, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That is the fundamental distinction between existing solely in your mind and actively living in reality. You cease merely narrating your potential and instead begin to demonstrate it. You stop contemplating change and begin embodying it. And as the days accumulate, your habits take form, not as temporary fixes, but as the very architecture of the person you are becoming. Is that not the ultimate aspiration that we all share? To live a life where we not only endure the chaos, but navigate it with unwavering clarity? A way of living that doesn't hinge on sporadic bursts of motivation, but flows from a deep wellspring of internal alignment. Aristotle profoundly said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you move with intention, you begin to discern which actions are authentically yours and which were merely borrowed, imitated, inherited, or driven by fear. And once you recognize this crucial distinction, you naturally cease choosing the things that deplete you. What transpires when discipline becomes your norm? You cease negotiating with your lesser self. You stop waiting for the stars to perfectly align before you dare to take action. Instead, you begin to cultivate a relationship with discomfort, because you now recognize that discomfort signals growth, not danger. You cease avoiding the difficult tasks and instead begin to embrace them, because you have witnessed firsthand how rapidly progress compounds once you remove yourself from your own path. Why is it that so few individuals ever reach this pivotal point? Because consistency lacks glamour. Because genuine transformation doesn't lend itself well to social media posts. It demands showing up even when no one is watching, even when nothing around you seems to be changing, at least not immediately. But over time, everything undergoes a transformation, not because the world bends to your will, but because you have molded yourself into someone capable of navigating it with unwavering strength, enduring patience, and unwavering purpose. Then, ask yourself, why do so few people truly live in this manner? Why do so many proclaim their desire for success, yet struggle to leave their beds without first checking their phones? Why do they speak of ambition, vision, and drive, only to squander the initial hour of their day reacting to everyone else's agenda? Why do they profess dedication to discipline, yet surrender countless hours to gossip, mindless entertainment, or mental clutter? Why do they assert their longing for change, yet continue to make the same choices that have kept them stagnant the day before? We have, lamentably, normalized distraction. We have made it socially acceptable to exist on autopilot. But what if the fundamental problem isn't that people are inherently lazy or unmotivated, but rather that they have simply never learned to safeguard their attention? Herein lies the truth: people are not afflicted with a time shortage, they are grappling with a control deficit. Their days are not lacking in hours, they are lacking in ownership. Carl Jung cautioned us long ago, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And distraction? It is the most readily available form of avoidance. When you pause and genuinely examine your habits, your routines, your choices, you begin to comprehend the extent to which you have surrendered your life to the pervasive noise. Not maliciously, not consciously, but gradually, day by day, you have relinquished fragments of your time to convenience, to fleeting emotion, to external expectation. And what remains is often not truly yours, but merely what is left over. However, once you witness this reality, you can never unsee it. Once you recognize the subtle ways in which you have been subtly steered off course, you begin to reclaim your direction. You cease outsourcing your attention. You decide, quietly and powerfully, that your hours belong to you. And in that precise moment, you commence your ascent. No more drifting aimlessly, no more awakening without a sense of mission, no more allowing the first message or headline to dictate the tone of your day. You rise and you move, not based on fleeting mood, but on unwavering purpose. You execute your tasks without consulting your emotions, because emotions are transient, while goals are steadfast. You begin to treat time as the rare, irreplaceable asset that it truly is. Plato, in his wisdom, declared, "The beginning is the most important part of the work." And your day's commencement? It establishes the tone for everything that follows. You either claim it with clarity, or the world seizes it by default. And when you make that pivotal shift, when you transition from reacting to everything to creating with intention, your output undergoes a transformation, not gradually, but immediately. You accomplish more in a single day than you previously managed to squeeze into an entire week, not because you have suddenly acquired superhuman abilities, but because you are no longer fragmented, you are finally focused. Focused attention is a precious commodity, and like all rare things, it wields immense power. You cease multitasking your life away. You stop attempting to do everything at once and instead commit to doing the right things deeply, consistently, and without compromise. Socrates sagely cautioned, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." And that is precisely the danger that most people face, not failure through idleness, but failure through unexamined busyness. However, once you grasp that productivity isn't about speed, but about direction, everything undergoes a fundamental shift. Now, consider this: are you operating from a place of intention or from a place of reaction? Because the manner in which you answer that question will subtly shape every day you live and ultimately define the future you are relentlessly heading toward. It is not a small question. It is, in fact, the question that most individuals never pause long enough to even ask. They simply continue onward, but onward to where? Running at great speed signifies nothing if you are merely running in circles. Aristotle once said, "All men by nature desire to know." But knowing yourself, your inherent tendencies, your ingrained patterns, your unconscious defaults, is where that desire must begin. The victors? They have already made that transformative shift. They recognize that discipline triumphs over motivation every single time, because motivation is inherently unpredictable. It is a fair-weather friend, appearing when conditions are favorable and it feels convenient. But when the alarm blares at an ungodly hour, when the task at hand is daunting, when nothing around you offers encouragement, discipline is what steps into the void. Those who rise above the ordinary do not rely on their emotional state. They act, particularly when they feel disinclined to do so, because they have trained their minds to serve their mission, not their fleeting moods. Is that not the very essence of strength? Not merely brute force, but unwavering direction, not devoid of emotion, but governed by unyielding discipline. Discipline compels you to confront yourself. It strips away the noise, the rationalizations, the excuses. And what remains is stark clarity. You either fulfilled your commitments or you did not. There is no escape from that reality. Most individuals erroneously believe that motivation serves as the trigger. It does not. Action does. The initial step precedes the spark of inspiration. Awaiting motivation is akin to standing in complete darkness and hoping that the sun will rise solely for you. It will not. But if you strike the match, if you act despite the absence of inspiration, you generate your own inner fire. The more you act, the more intrinsically motivated you become. And the more consistently you follow through, the more natural it feels to repeat the process. It is not a mere coincidence, it is feedback. You have demonstrated to your brain that momentum is attainable, and now it is eager to sustain it. But why do some individuals appear to soar effortlessly above, while others remain stubbornly mired in place? It is not a matter of luck, nor talent, nor even timing. It is something far simpler, yet infinitely more powerful, the capacity to move forward regardless of emotional state. Those who succeed act with urgency, not with blind panic, but with unwavering presence. They understand that hesitation is a thief, that waiting to feel fully prepared is the surest path to never beginning. Therefore, they cease waiting. They guard their focus as if it were the very air they breathe, because in truth, it is. In a world meticulously designed to scatter your mind in 100 different directions, clarity is nothing short of survival. The more focused you are, the more of your inherent potential you can access. And they say no, frequently and without apology, not out of selfishness, but out of alignment. If something threatens to pull them away from their mission, it simply does not belong. Plato wisely cautioned, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. These individuals have declared that victory, not through mere rhetoric, but through decisive action. And yes, that entails ruthlessly eliminating extraneous elements, saying no to distractions, no to obligations that serve the priorities of others, and no to habits that silently drain your energy and dull your competitive edge. It is an uncomfortable process, because it necessitates releasing what is familiar and comfortable. It forces you to confront the reality that certain elements occupying your time are not contributing to your future, they are merely filling space. But that discomfort, it is absolutely necessary. Because nothing new can flourish in a life that stubbornly clings to the old. That is the part that most individuals are unwilling to embrace. They will chase after structure, but shy away from sacrifice. They will download every productivity application, convinced that the solution lies within the latest system or the newest tool. They will set grandiose resolutions in January and promptly forget them by March. However, they will not make the difficult cuts. They will not confront the clutter, not merely in their calendars, but within their very minds. They will not eliminate the pervasive noise. And most critically, they will not assume full ownership, because ownership implies that there is no one left to blame, no algorithm, no demanding boss, no unfavorable circumstance, only you. Therefore, they remain busy, yet never truly effective. Their calendars are brimming with activity, but their results are hollow. They diligently check boxes, yet never make meaningful progress. They perpetually feel exhausted, not because they have accomplished too much, but because they have accomplished too much of what is fundamentally inconsequential. They move incessantly, but always in circles. It is, as Jung so eloquently put it, hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil. Movement devoid of meaning transforms into a form of self-sabotage. But those who genuinely rise above live their lives differently. They navigate the same world, but they do so on their own terms. They do not passively await the arrival of clarity, they actively create it. They do not require external reminders or blaring alarms to awaken early. They rise before the world awakens, because they value solitude, stillness, and strategic planning. They carve out dedicated time to think, to plan, and to prepare, not because it is fashionable, but because it provides them with an advantage that most people are too distracted to even pursue. Do you perceive the critical distinction? The average person lives in a state of perpetual reaction. The uncommon individual lives with unwavering intention. One is driven by the demands of others, the other is firmly anchored in what truly matters. Socrates wisely said, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." And he was undeniably correct. A packed schedule signifies nothing if it is not aligned with your deeper, more meaningful goals. The harsh truth is that most people are addicted to the sensation of motion, because it effectively distracts them from confronting the underlying lack of meaning. However, when you cut through the cacophony of noise, when you simplify your life, when you subtract the unnecessary, you begin to notice something profound. Focus becomes effortless, energy becomes sustainable, and results begin to materialize, not because you are exerting more effort, but because you are finally working with greater intelligence. Your life ceases to be a constant state of reaction and instead transforms into a deliberate act of creation. They fiercely guard the initial hour of their day as if it were sacred. No emails, no news, no endless scrolling, just silence, strategic planning, and purposeful movement. That sacred space, the stillness before the world begins its relentless pull, is not a mere luxury, it is an absolute necessity. It is where clarity is honed, where direction is chosen, and where the mind sets its intended tone. Because the initial hour is not solely about what you accomplish, it is profoundly about who you become in the process of doing it. It is a declaration to yourself, I am in control today. Because how you commence is how you will ultimately conclude. If you relinquish your focus early on, you will spend the remainder of the day chasing after it. It is like water slipping through your grasp. Once it is gone, you are left desperately scrambling, hoping to recapture something that was never intended to be lost in the first place. Carl Jung wisely said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." The more you evade taking ownership in the morning, the more life will overwhelm you by midday. And suddenly, your day no longer feels as if it belongs to you. It feels borrowed, or worse, stolen. But when you lead from the forefront, when you open your eyes and act as if your time is truly your own, you begin to operate on a level that most people will never attain. You begin to experience a strange yet incredibly powerful sensation, authority over your own existence. And with that, something profound shifts. Decisions become sharper, emotions settle, and distractions lose their magnetic pull. Why? Because you initiated your day in command, and everything else naturally falls into alignment behind that. You cease leaking energy, not in some dramatic fashion, but quietly and consistently. You decline requests more readily. You scroll less habitually, because you are already engaged in something meaningful. You cease negotiating with excuses, because there is no longer room for them in your meticulously crafted schedule. You no longer need to search for time, because you have already claimed it. Socrates wisely said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." And that is precisely what this dedicated morning space allows. It becomes a daily act of deliberate, internal building, free from distractions. You cease entertaining anything that does not propel you forward, not out of arrogance, but out of unwavering alignment. You realize that time invested in activities that do not nourish your goals is simply time spent delaying them. Therefore, you begin the process of pruning. You release conversations that drain you. You decline invitations that steer you off course. You even silence your own internal doubts, not because you have forcibly suppressed your mind, but because you have trained it to listen to something far deeper, your unwavering purpose. Is that not what we are all searching for beneath the surface noise? Not more tasks, not more chaos, but a way to navigate the day with intention, clarity, and unwavering conviction. You treat your mornings with that level of importance. The rest of your life naturally begins to rise to meet that elevated standard. And the speed of your progress? It explodes, not gradually, not hesitantly, but suddenly. You begin to comprehend that growth does not have to be a slow crawl, it accelerates the instant you eliminate the friction. All the time you previously squandered on doubt, on excessive overthinking, on meaningless obligations, is now reclaimed. And with that reclaimed time comes clarity, and with that clarity comes decisive action. And once action becomes consistent, the results materialize far faster than you ever thought possible. Things that once consumed weeks now take mere days. Why? Because there is nothing left to steer you off course. No persistent interruptions chipping away at your momentum, no drifting thoughts or scattered intentions, no time wasted justifying procrastination to yourself. It is simply you and your mission, unfiltered, undistracted, and fully alive. Carl Jung wisely said, "Who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes." And that awakening? It occurs when you eliminate everything that lulls you back into slumber. You cease starting over repeatedly. You stop falling into the trap of stop-and-go progress. You cease expending your precious energy attempting to recover what distractions have stolen. Instead, you move consistently and steadily, and suddenly, you are accomplishing more than ever before, yet feeling lighter in the process, not because it is effortless, but because it is aligned with your true purpose. And here is what most people tragically overlook: momentum is a genuine force. It is not merely a conceptual idea, it is a potent psychological reality. It compounds, it builds upon itself. Once you possess it, you become almost immune to the debilitating effects of hesitation. But you will never acquire it if you continuously halt your progress. Every time you yield to the temptation not to move forward, you impede the construction of anything meaningful. If your efforts hinge solely on whether today feels right, you will never truly transform your life. If you persist in pausing your progress for every distraction that promises fleeting comfort, Plato, in his boundless wisdom, once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." And power, in this context, commences with consistency, the capacity to continue showing up, to continue moving forward, even when no one is watching, even when no one is offering applause, and especially then. If you continue to permit distractions to infiltrate your life, if you repeatedly relinquish control, you will inevitably rob yourself of that invaluable momentum. Every moment spent scrolling aimlessly, every instance of, "I'll do it later," every fleeting moment you allow yourself to drift idly, it all accumulates, not just in terms of time lost, but in terms of identity lost. The cost extends far beyond mere productivity, it encompasses your very potential. Do you genuinely desire change? Then demonstrate it, Not to anyone else, but to yourself, to the part of you that has grown weary of empty promises and is poised to act. Protect your time as if your very existence depends on it, because in a very real and tangible sense, it does. Time is your most irreplaceable resource. Once it is expended, it cannot be replenished. Every second you waste is a second you will never recover. Every affirmation you extend to something meaningless is a silent rejection of your own inherent potential. Therefore, cease waiting, cease hesitating, cease hoping that some external force will propel you forward, because no savior is coming to rescue you. No sudden breakthrough, no miraculous event, no perfectly timed opportunity. No one will magically materialize in your life and bestow upon you the gifts of discipline, clarity, or purpose. These must emanate from within. And until you fully grasp that fundamental truth, you will continue to relinquish your power. You will persist in seeking solutions that were never external to you in the first place. However, everything can undergo a radical and immediate transformation if you make one unwavering decision: you are in control, not your phone, not your fleeting emotions, not your past experiences, not your impulsive desires, not your myriad distractions. You, with your heightened awareness, your capacity to choose, and your inherent power to change. Carl Jung pointedly stated, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." That statement is not merely a quote for passive reflection, it is a challenge, a resounding call to accept responsibility, not only for your current circumstances, but for the trajectory of your future. From this moment forward, your time is non-negotiable. Not merely important, not merely valuable, but utterly non-negotiable. You safeguard it with the same fervent dedication that a philosopher guards wisdom, because without it, everything else inevitably slips away. Your energy is sacred. It is not intended to be depleted by trivial pursuits. It is meant to be purposefully directed, meticulously focused, and intensely concentrated toward constructing the kind of life you resolutely refuse to compromise on. Your discipline is no longer merely a tool to be employed when convenient, it is your strategic advantage, your protective armor, the defining line that separates you from the realm of mediocrity. And your actions, each and every one, are no longer dictated by comfort or transient emotions, they are meticulously aligned with something far greater, the person you are actively becoming. Do you fully comprehend what transpires when you make this transformative shift? You cease merely surviving and commence dominating, not dominating other individuals, but dominating yourself, your baser instincts, your distractions, and your fears. Socrates firmly believed that to know oneself is the genesis of all wisdom. However, wisdom devoid of action is ultimately wasted. When you act in accordance with your highest self, you begin to meticulously design your days with unwavering intention. You begin to live on purpose, not by sheer accident. And the truth is, it does not necessitate a year to transform your life. It doesn't even require a month. It requires a singular moment, a moment where you decisively declare, "This ends now." A moment where you resolutely refuse to tolerate further delay, indecision, or distraction. A moment where you cease reacting to life and instead boldly commence creating it. Can that moment be this evening? Absolutely. Can it be now? Even more advantageous. Because once you fully grasp the power of a single, unwavering decision, fully embraced and fully lived, then the oppressive weight of old excuses begins to dissipate. The past ceases to matter if the present is lived with intention and integrity. And this new beginning commences with you, right here and right now, choosing to no longer wait another second. Therefore, ask yourself, with unwavering honesty and profound conviction, are you finally prepared to seize control? Not merely for an hour, not merely for a single day, but for your entire life, because this choice is not temporary, it is transformative. It is not merely motivational, it is foundational. Once you commit, once you resolutely declare, "This is mine now," your focus undergoes a radical shift, your habits transform, your results improve exponentially, and slowly at first, then suddenly, you undergo a profound transformation. Because once you seize control, truly seize control, everything shifts. Your world becomes sharper, your direction becomes clearer. You no longer seek permission or await motivation. You move, you build, you lead. And the life you have been patiently waiting for, it ceases its own waiting as well. It meets you at the level of your unwavering discipline. You do not require more time, you require more deliberate direction. And the instant you choose to lead your life instead of passively following it, you cease chasing after potential and instead commence living it. Control is not something you passively await, it is something you actively claim, quietly, relentlessly, every single day. Thank you for being a part of. There is always more to explore, more to master, and more untapped potential within you than you have been led to believe. Let us continue onward, at your own pace, but with greater purpose.